Please join me in giving a warm, warm welcome to director, writer, producer Brad Hall and actor, producer Julia Louis-Dreyfuss. And Mark or anybody that can help us out, if you could bring some waters up, that would be great. Thank you. So here we are. I think we talked about this a year and 3 months ago, and here we are. It's so nice. It's, as I said backstage before, it was so worth waiting for. This is a real timeless film, and it has so much good, so many great examples. Thank you so much, Mark. That it's going to live on for a long time, and you should be very proud of it. It's
Thank you.
Really beautiful. So a lot of water has gone under the bridge since you made this film, 2015, correct? Is that right? Lots has happened with both of your lives. You've had huge triumphs. You've had great loss in your life. Your dad now has passed, and my condolences. I think he passed right about the time my dad passed, and you've survived cancer. Bravo! And it's amazing. So catch us up. Tell us about what has happened since this film has been made. What have you seen as you've screened it around the country? What kind of impact has it had? And tell us about, I want you to tell the story about the recent auction, because this is kind of like the beginning of the
Yes,
the
well,
process.
It took a couple of years to sort of get everything underway with the foundation itself. There was a lot of legal stuff to iron out. And I should also state that the other agenda of the foundation is education itself. So we very frequently have visits and tours of the museum, and we have school groups come in all the time, and so on and so forth. But the really exciting thing that happened fairly recently is that we actually had our first sale of art at Christie's. We sold about 40 works, and we were able to hand a check to Jeffrey Canada for $1 million. So that was just, it was a dream come true. I know my father was smiling broadly from wherever he is. And we are about to launch further shows. We have something very exciting happening in New York in a couple of weeks. We're going to be showing at the Zwirner Gallery in New York about 40 of the trailer works, which have really gone up significantly in value. There was a big trailer show at the Smithsonian this past year that was met with great acclaim, critical acclaim. And we'll be doing that. We're very excited about it because being shown at the Zwirner Gallery, his works takes his work out of the category of self-taught or outsider art and into mainstream art. And that's a distinction that is meaningful, and it's meaningful in terms of the value of the art as well. So we're excited about that potential, and we're feeling very positive about that. And we have multiple shows coming up. We've made a numerous agreements with Christie's and with Sotheby's and so on. But of course, mindful of the fact all the time that we do not want to flood the market with art. We're doing this very thoughtfully and carefully and slowly over a long period of time, for every reason you can imagine, because this is in fact a long long-term endeavor. And yeah, that's my little update.
That's great. Woo! Wonderful. So will either, both of you, or maybe you already have done this, will you track and keep in touch with and follow students and their personal paths? I mean, the thought of, the babies coming in and the 1-year-olds to the people graduating from college, that's as Jeffrey was saying, it's a long time.
Yes.
Do you know any of these young people personally? Have you met them yet? Do you think you'll follow some of them?
Well, I had the great opportunity to meet a bunch of them recently. I want to say it was, what month are we in? I can't remember when that was, maybe in the beginning of the summer or something.
Yeah.
And there was a big fundraiser for the Harlem Children's Zone in New York, and I was lucky enough to attend, and I met a ton of students there, and that was very inspirational to me. Such accomplished young men and women who were there. They didn't have tiny little ones there, but they had more of the teenagers, and God, they were so impressive in every way. And so the answer is yes, of course, absolutely.
Yeah.
We're very invested.
The poem.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
A bunch of students wrote a poem about for me about courage and stamina and so on, which was really very
Because all these
tender.
kids they come and see the art and they visit. That's the one. Every time I see this movie, the one thing I'm so frustrated by is that we didn't get a chance, because we were on a very short schedule when we shot it. We didn't get a chance to shoot the kids in the gallery seeing the art. Which is such a huge part of that, the actual bringing together. So I always fantasize I'm going to open it up and go shoot that maybe this year.
Yeah, we could still do
We
it,
can
I
still
guess.
do that,
Yeah.
but they're so affected by it that they wanted to write a poem for Jules.
That was one of my questions, was have they seen it?
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah, it's a
they
regular
put the
thing.
pieces together.
Oh, yeah.
About this art is going to help me.
Oh,
Get to-
100%. No,
yeah.
they're keenly
That's
aware
great.
of that connection.
That is so great. Has the film and the exposure to the art, now you've also mentioned that you're doing shows. I'm assuming that it is increasing the value of the art
Yeah,
as
that's
you go along.
when we first set out to make the thing. It was a home movie, really, is what we wanted to do, and just to document for our kids their grandfather and what he was doing. And then we thought, well, wait a second, we could spend a little more time to make this something that is useful for the collection. So in addition to being at various theaters and for raising money for things that we've done before, and when the art goes out, the film will often go out with it, and that seems to have been a really effective tool. So that's it was in Washington recently, and it's been all over the place.
That's great. And I would also imagine that it's impacted the careers of many of these artists who are now probably showing in more prestigious museums or galleries because of their exposure.
I hope so, but this is actually yes, and also yes in the future. I mean, this is like I say, this takes patience, and we have to be very discerning about how we sort of roll this stuff out.
Yeah.
So and we're only a couple years in, so it's
But
taken.
for us, making this, we'd never met any of these people.
Right.
I mean, Raymond Mason was the only one of these artists, I think the only one that I had met. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you'd met a couple.
No, I met a
of them.
couple, but yes,
But
you're right.
we didn't know that William had these really close and important relationships with so many of these artists. And so when they came through for us to talk to and in the making of this film, we got to know them and got to be interested in them, and so we followed them. And George Baruggi, who's become a good friend of ours, and we're keenly interested in what happens to all of them. So we can keep an eye on them. And they all have fabulous Instagram. Can you imagine the Instagram of these people? Oh my God!
Yeah, you should follow George
Really,
Baruggi.
Baruggi's
You won't
Instagram is
believe what he
ridiculous.
posts. It's pretty fab.
His art is absolutely stunning.
He's the guy that was doing the buffalo, right?
Yeah.
And that buffalo, he paints with colored ink. He doesn't paint with paint. So it's colored ink on paper. So if he makes a mistake, it's over. It's not like watercolor, or you can't blur it out or go over it with oil like you can with so many other media. It's done. So to see him painting and he's very cavalier, but he's incredible. He's fantastic.
You pointed out very clearly in the movie the whole idea of the connection, which is one of the most special parts about this whole story. I'm curious to know at what point your dad made that connection for himself, because there was, the early years he's engaged with these artists, he's loving their work, he creates relationships with them, and then he meets Jeffrey and he gets the idea of, I could be of help here, and then there must have been a light bulb go off in his head and went, oh my God, I can use this outsider art, these artists who in so many ways have so many things in relationship with the students at the zone. What point did he go, ding?
You mean to actually make the decision to make
to-
this gift? Oh, well, I can tell you exactly. He saw Jeffrey Canada on 60 Minutes.
I remember that.
Yeah, and was completely smitten, and figured out a way to get a meeting with Jeffrey Canada. And at that point, he was sort of trying to figure out what in the living hell to do with all of this art, because there was so much of it, and he was in the process of sort of pulling it all together. And it's too much. It's absurd. And then he saw Jeffrey Canada, and he thought, oh yeah, this guy knows what he's doing. We're going to set it up this way. And when he told me about it, I was utterly blown away. I thought it was it was a relief to me, to be honest with you, because really, I didn't mean it as a joke. It's too much. It's enough. And the idea that we could do something of good with it beyond just admiring it on the wall ourselves, and there's nothing wrong, of course, with enjoying art, but you know what I mean, was very meaningful, and I wanted to document it because I thought it was an interesting way of thinking about philanthropy.
Yeah.
It's fun also that he didn't. This idea came to him after, I can't remember the guy's name, from Los Angeles. It was a guy that was running a museum in Los Angeles. Anyway, he came out and looked at the collection, and I think he was the first sort of high-end collector type or art historian type who said to William, this is a really spectacularly unusual collection that as a whole has real value. And I think up to that point, he was tied to the value of it, just how it made him feel and how he had discovered it. He was proud of it. I think he knew some of it was valuable. He'd certainly bought and sold some paintings, but it wasn't. He didn't think of it as sort of as an asset that he could use until this guy came and said, this is a really significant, big time significant collection. And it just happened to be that that's when he saw Jeff Canada on 60 Minutes, and he was like, oh, if it's worth something, I'll get rid of it. So before it had a tangible price that he could put a finger on, he wasn't interested in giving it away. But once he realized, oh, wait, I've put this together. So that was one of the things, just from a philanthropic point of view, was so interesting to us, that his passion for the art is really what he's giving away. And that now has this residual value to, not just to him, because he's gone, but to his kids and to the kids at the Harlem Children's Zone, and the reverberations are so fun for us.
Yeah. Jeffrey Canada spoke on this stage.
Oh, he did?
Oh, we did?
In 2010.
Isn't he incredible?
Yeah.
Amazing man.
Yeah.
I hope to meet him next week
Yes, indeed.
in New York. I didn't realize that, but he was part of the Arts and Lectures series in 2010, and he spoke here at the Luke.
Yeah, fantastic.
There's a moment in the film, many moments, but there's one that really got me, and I wanted to get your take on this, Julia. You read this letter from Baruchi about his take on your dad and his influence on him, and personally as a patron, a true patron, but also about his presence, because he talks about being alone when he's working, but it's almost as if he's presencing your dad, as his partner in his art. Why was that letter so emotional for you?
Well, do we have an hour and a half?
Dr. Latham.
It was meaningful to me because to put it very bluntly, my relationship with my father was somewhat fraught. And he was had huge impact in my life, and I admired admired him tremendously and loved him deeply. But he was, as I say, a complicated fellow, and he was somebody that I sort of yearned for a lot in our relationship. He wasn't always present. And so the idea, and of course, I am kind of an artist myself. I don't paint, but and I think if my dad were here, he might roll his eyes, which gives you an idea as to how fraught this relationship was. So there was a sense of trying to get his attention and get his feedback and get his sort of stamp of approval that I always felt in my life. And so when George Baruggi was speaking about it artistically, it resonated with me as a result, if that's a good answer.
I hear you. Yeah.
Anyway.
It was a beautiful moment. And I loved what your dad had to say about what George had to say about your dad. What a beautiful relationship. And I felt the twinge of like, but Dad, you could have been there for me a little bit more.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
I really.
And there was a lot of unspoken stuff there. I think coming from him too, but
Yeah. One of my favorite bumper stickers, and I've seen it everywhere. I've seen it on bumper stickers, I've seen posters, is the saying that art saves lives. It's been a theme for my life. This film, this whole story, is a classic example of art saving lives and building lives. Talk a little bit about how art has played a role of not necessarily a saving, but a building. It's been a benefit to you in your life. Maybe, I don't know if it's saved your life, but you must know people. I know so many people who I can say, that person's life was saved by art.
I would guess that first I would say that this man over here really saved my life. But yeah, I think that's worthy of applause. But I'm just speaking for me, I'm a creative person. So sort of sinking my teeth into a creative endeavor has helped me enormously from a very young age through to today. And frankly, even when I was diagnosed with cancer and had to sort of walk through that treacherous path, the thought of getting back to work and thinking about character and relationship and behavior was kind of this life raft. And so I guess what I'm saying is it sort of drove home, for me anyway, the notion that the pursuit of art for myself is an end into itself. I mean, the success and everything around it, yeah, sure, that's fantastic. But the act of doing and creating that's the real gift. For me, that's been the gift. But the other thing I would say, actually, in fact, is that I think, art takes many forms and shapes. And I think that my dad speaks about, really, when he was talking about sympathy and empathy and feeling connected to your fellow man. I think art can instill that in us, be it a painting, be it a film, be it a book. When you can get inside of something, if there's a way into another life and art provides that avenue, I think it can, in fact, make the world a better place. And empathy and kindness are needed these days in particular. So I'm a big fan.
You want to add to that?
The only thing I'd add to that is getting back to Bill Traylor. Here's a guy born a slave, no training of any kind. At 80 years old, he decides, I think I'm going to paint. And you saw what the guy paints. And somehow he is connected his experience, what he's seen, to creation. And I think that clearly, it certainly put an exclamation point on his life. I don't know if he would say it saved his life, but what an incredible thing he's left for us. So to be an artist and to create, that's one thing. But I think for all of us to see that, to see what a guy like Bill Traylor can do, is a very liberating and very joyful and positive thing, even when sometimes the subject matter might be very, very dark, or it might reveal things that aren't so beautiful. Just the idea that somebody can be so in touch with that and be able to create, to express, is fabulous. And I think for William, the collection of all of that, to feel close to that and to be a part of that, became such an important part of his life, and Julia got to sort of discover how important it was very late. But then to be able to take the thing that we did know, which was his passion for justice for African Americans, that was very clear at any dinner table that you would sit down with him at, or since the day that I met him, that was going to come up. But the fact that he could marry these things together, so I think that's an art in itself, that he was able to have the clarity of thought to put that together and to say, okay, that's what I'm going to do with what I've loved all my life. I think that was a great moment of making art for him as well.
Yeah, I think it's the best thing he ever did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You two are two of the hardest working artists in the business. There's no.
I'm not sure
doubt
about that, Rob, but I
well,
appreciate it.
I don't know anybody that works harder or more passionately than you do. And Brad is behind the scenes working just as passionately. You've directed many of the episodes of Veep. Having known you all for a long time and watching your careers, it's astounding to me what you do and how much joy you take in it. So my question for both of you is, what is it about what you do that you love?
You want to take that first?
You know, I think that there better be more than one thing about it.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
for sure.
Sure.
But I think that ultimately, for both of us, I would guess, there was a moment when we first got a laugh that stuck with us. And sure, drama's fine. But there's nothing quite like getting a laugh.
Yeah.
So, you know, that goes way back to when we were kids, and the first time, Julie has a great story about the first time she got a laugh, which was by accident, really, and it stuck with her. And I think that's really the thing for me, is like, oh, getting a laugh. What a great thing. What a great way to make a living. You get to make people laugh. Holy crap, that's really fun.
Cool.
I would add to that and say that, yes, of course, getting a laugh is awfully gratifying, but I would also say I sort of liken it to me, perhaps being on a sports team. I like linking arms with a bunch of people and, you know, going towards a goal, the goal being whatever the project is you happen to be working on, be it drama or comedy, and working as a team. I'm a big fan of ensemble work, and that is, to me, just utterly delicious. I just love it. Yeah.
And I don't think we've ever seen an ensemble like the Veep ensemble.
Oh, thank you.
It's unmatched.
Thank you.
It's unmatched. And I've been watching all the outtakes, the blooper reels, just, you know, hysterical, wiping the tears from my face and thinking about how much fun you all had and how close that ensemble was.
Yes, we were very lucky.
It's a
It
brilliant.
wasn't easy.
And no, I'm sure it wasn't, but it certainly worked. It was amazing. So let's segue to a couple of memories. We're sitting here on the Marjorie Luke Theater stage. You and I were here in junior high school, and there are some folks here tonight who are here with us on these boards. What comes to mind when you're sitting here looking out?
I was thinking about two things. One was the fire we had on stage during Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of Oz, yes.
That I believe Dante Di Loretto might have started, or else he was burned up. I can't remember which.
I think he got burned. I think it was the crew.
And the other one was, I don't know if Ty Granaroli is here tonight. I hope he is. But Ty put his foot through the ceiling about right behind those lights, and really could have fallen all the way down onto the stairs when we were sneaking around. We used to sneak around all around the school. And I think Mrs. Luke sort of semi-knew that we did it and just was hoping to catch us, kind of, but also letting us get away with it. So
Yeah.
those are two of them.
Yeah.
But we really, and the other, I was talking to Jules about the other day about how she set it up so the crew was fourth period, fifth period was, then there was lunch, and then fifth period was theater arts, so that we would work for like 4 hours for her.
Forget lunch.
Yeah, forget lunch. You work right through lunch. So It was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
And we worked hard.
Yeah.
We worked really hard. Yeah, yeah. Those were amazing days, and for me, it's so nostalgic to do the full circle. Now, as you know, a white-haired person, to sit on the stage where I made my debut, as you did, and remember the times in here, and that's why I'm still on the board here, and why I will do everything I can to keep this place going. Wizard of Oz.
Oh, it was. Okay.
As coroner, I must have erred.
Believe me, I remember it very well.
I
can
thoroughly
see it clearly.
examined her, Kim Thomas, and I had a huge crush on her. And Marge was standing right down here, and she stopped and she said, "Rod, you're looking at Dorothy too much. You're supposed to be examining the dead witch, not Dorothy." And of course, I just turned red and wanted to run off and climb in a hole. Marge. So, do either of you have any thoughts to share to young people who are considering careers that mirror your careers? It's a different world today in education in terms of how to get to do what you all are doing.
I was in a panel discussion once with a bunch of artistic directors of theater companies in Chicago, where I used to work back in the day, and was a bunch of guys from Northwestern, students from Northwestern, who were listening to this discussion. And at the end, that question was asked, is there any, a kid in the audience stood up and said, and John Malkovich was there, who was a huge movie star at that moment, had just become
and
huge.
the head of Steppenwolf
And the
Theater.
head of Steppenwolf Theater. And this kid gets up and very nervously says, I want to be an actor more than anything, and do you have any advice for me, Mr. Malkovich? And Malkovich looks at him and goes, "Give up. Don't go into the theater. If you have any talent, and I don't think you do, I don't need the competition."
Oh, jeez.
And of course he was kidding, but you can never tell with Malkovich.
No.
The kid just shrank. Oh, it was horrible. And as we were walking out, he kind of leaned over my shoulder and said, "Was I too hard on that kid?" So I'm very wary to give advice.
Well, I mean, I would say that nowadays there's so many opportunities to create material, and given the fact that there's so many platforms everywhere, I think the world to a certain extent is your oyster if you can somehow break through. But the idea that with your phone you can make a movie. I wish I'd been able to do that when I was in 6th grade, So I think that there's a lot to be said for creation and using all the tools that are at hand nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Many technology changing everything. So I have to ask you, first I have to tell you, the Mark Twain Prize, I mean, it doesn't get any bigger or better than that.
Thank you.
I was so proud watching in my living room going, what a night.
It sure was.
Night.
Yeah.
And so I researched all the people that had won that prize. It's a relatively short list. You're in really amazing company. The only person I thought that was really missing, but I guess maybe they don't do it for people who are no longer living, was Lucille Ball.
Right. I don't think they had it then.
They didn't have it, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think she would be on it if she
One
was
would
the right
hope,
time.
yeah.
So I realized, in looking them up, that 6 of the past Mark Twain Prize winners had a connection to Saturday Night Live. All but a couple have appeared on Saturday Night Live.
Wow.
And 5 of the winners either live or have lived in Santa Barbara.
No way.
Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
are they?
Steve Martin.
Steve Martin, Ellen DeGeneres, Carol Burnett, Lily Tomlin was here for a while.
Yes.
Whoopi Goldberg was here for a while.
Amazing.
Jonathan Winters was here.
Oh, wow.
That's
Yeah.
cool as hell.
That's
And-
really
and
cool.
you're here.
So we're no
pretty
dummies.
lucky. We're pretty lucky, yeah.
Good for Santa Barbara.
Of that list of people who have been honored with the Mark Twain Prize, is there anyone in particular that you, I mean, they're all stunning, amazing artists. Anyone that you particularly admire, look up to, or inspired by?
Oh gosh, well I'd have to have the list in front of me, but and now I need my glasses. Is this the whole list?
That's
No way.
the whole list.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my God, yes. Yes. Well, I would say certainly Richard Pryor was somebody that I grew up watching when I was little, and his stand-up I thought was amazing. Carl Reiner, where would we be without Carl Reiner, or Bob Newhart for that matter? Both of those guys were formative for me in terms of the shows that they created, Carl and Bob Newhart both. And without my knowing it, sort of was an education for me about doing half-hour television. Norman Lear is not on this list. He should be on this list. That is absurd, and I'm going to write a letter of complaint to the
Mark Twain himself.
to Mark Twain himself.
Dear Mr. Twain.
Yes, but Norman Lear is actually, in fact, and although he's not on this list, I do want to point out that I think he is someone who has shaped American entertainment and married a kind of, shall we say, empathy, politics, and comedy all at once. And he's done it on multiple occasions with great effect.
And he's 97 and he's still doing it.
And he's still doing
Amazing,
it, if you can believe that.
He is completely, absolutely sharp as a tack at 97 years old. And
Yeah, completely. Yeah. But anyway, I love everyone on this list. I'm not dissing anyone on the list. I think they're all great.
So one last question. It's a two-parter. You all were amazingly successful at creating the series of Veep without ever drawing out parties. Where they were never Democrats or Republicans. It was just DC. And I loved hearing, I think you told a story a while back about you would hear from people from one side of the aisle who go, oh, you really got them. And the other people would say the same thing about you. And I loved that. Was it difficult to maintain, given our present and the last few years of our world, ideas for scripts that were more outrageous than what was already happening in the world?
Well, yes.
That's what I thought.
And it's not the reason, but it's certainly, the reason we ended the series after 7 seasons was because we felt as if we told all the stories we wanted to tell. It felt like a creative, good stopping point. But I will not lie, this was a very challenging period of time during the Trump presidency to be telling these stories, because I would argue he was doing a better job of making Veep episodes than we were, except of course they're not that funny. That's my political point of view. So, because, as when Veep first began, early episodes, the president tweets, for example, and it's one tweet and everybody goes ballistic because there is a tweet. And that was a storyline, or she said a word that was, that she got in trouble for, which I'm not going to repeat because this is a very nice crowd and I'm not going to insult anyone, but let's just say it's not that great a word. And she got in trouble for it. Well, today that would be nothing. It would be on PBS, So yes, it did become more difficult to tell those stories. Having said that, though, the fact that we did not identify party, it was a satire of political culture. That was our saving grace, and I think that's why we were able to stay on the air so successfully and maintain an audience during the 2 administrations that the show spanned.
Also, there were a lot of the people that were writing the show took the reality of it really seriously. So
yes.
they were constantly meeting with real politico types, but be they actual representatives or people that work behind the scenes, but real people, to get lots and lots of advice on what was going on and to look for stories. And they were always from both sides.
Yes, we had consultants on the show. We had people that worked in the Bush administration. We had people who worked in the Obama administration, the Clinton. Both sides of the aisle weighing in on script all the time because we wanted to make sure it felt authentic. within reason, even though there was sometimes a bit of a pile-on, but, and I think that was incredibly. I'll tell you one fun story, actually, along these lines. I had the great good fortune to meet Supreme Court Justice Elena Kagan, who was lovely, and said that she really enjoyed Veep. But she didn't enjoy it by herself. Justice Anton Scalia also loved the show. And when Veep was on in whatever season, they would get together every week after an episode and break it down over lunch, and we're laughing, ha, ha, ha. So that gave me a tremendous amount of pride, and I just was astounded to get that piece of information, the two of them laughing over the show together. That was good.
That's great. Well, we will all continue to watch and applaud your amazing artistic efforts. We and I personally thank you for your generosity of heart and your sweet offer of your time, because I know your time is immensely precious, and this has been such a treat having you both here. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's really fun.
Thank you.